We actually do a podcast here, Call It What You Want, featuring Jimmy, Conrad, and myself, and the new Canada Soccer, MLS
Canada men's national team head coach.
Guys, let's have some respect. It's the Major League Soccer Canada men's national team coach.
Yes.
Officially.
Jesse Marsch will do one more show with us as the Canadian national team coach, and then we'll move on into a new chapter of Call It What You Want. But this is an interesting.
Okay, you say interesting. We need to elaborate here. What was your reaction to this?
My reaction, I was torn. Obviously, I'm happy for him. He wants to manage.
Of course.
That's first and foremost. He wants to be a coach. He was waiting for opportunities. Nothing really stuck, and then finally, this opportunity came across his desk, and he had to have a serious look. You're managing in the World Cup, right? Canada has some super dynamic and top attacking players, attacking talent. Defensively in the spine, it's weak.
Would you say this is their golden era? Because I feel like.
You could argue that.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah, you have a number of European players playing in Europe that
this is the best
excelled.
team that Canada has ever produced in their history.
Right.
They had some glimpses of what they could do in a World Cup in the last one. The Belgian game was telling because they created a lot of chances, couldn't finish, and then they lose 1-0. But for Jesse Marsch to take this job, it's super high risk because you're playing in Copa America, and if you look at the
high risk for whom?
For Jesse Marsch, for sure.
His stock?
Yes, he wants to manage in Europe. That's where he wants. He doesn't want to manage in North America. He wants to manage in Europe. He has unfinished business. So if you're looking at what's in front of him, Copa America, they have Netherlands and France in friendlies in Europe. Fantastic. You want to play against the best in the world.
Yeah, but
then Argentina, Peru, Chile. To give this group real momentum, they have to get out of the group.
But what if they don't? It feels like Jesse has the excuse of, I just started this process. You're asking me to get out of the group of the Copa America right out of the gates against a two-time winner and then the best team in the world, or the defending World Cup champions.
Two-time winner doesn't really mean anything now.
Okay. Fair, but there's experience but there's experience in a tournament like this, which Canada doesn't have.
They played in the World Cup.
All.
They're fine. In terms of experience, they just competed against Belgium, Croatia, Morocco. So
you could say
you're taking a majority of their group.
One of the worst teams.
They were the second worst team in the World Cup.
It was a learning experience.
But I agree with Charlie in this case.
So
it is a learning
if you take that out of experience.
All right. Let's say they don't make it out of the group, because it's very possible they don't make it out of the group.
Yeah, very possible.
Peru and Chile, for as low as they've come from a nice era from a couple of seasons ago, or maybe even World Cup cycles ago, it's still Peru and Chile, and you have to have respect going into
Canada.
Are you
defensively? I just said they're weak.
Canadians, that Canada Soccer hired him with what expectation in the World Cup?
So this is the question that I ask, right? All right, Copa America, and even though you get out of the group, and then you either play Ecuador, Venezuela, who's on fire, Mexico, probably not Jamaica, right? You're going to finish second in the group with Argentina. If you get out of your group, you're finishing second.
Yeah.
You're going up against Mexico, which is beatable.
Yeah.
Might not even finish top of that group. It'll probably be Ecuador or Venezuela. Venezuela's playing really well right now.
So what you're saying is they can get to a semifinal. It's more like it's an easier path than what the U.S. have.
For sure.
It's an easier path than what the U.S. have.
I would agree, but if Jesse does make a semifinal, he doesn't have to prove anything else. Within 6 months, within 2 months, he proved his worth. And then whatever happens to the World Cup happens to the World Cup. You can't do worse than you did in
They had the group of death. They had the group of death.
You can't do worse than you did in Qatar.
I think you're taking a leap of faith that there's a certain level of expectation placed on him in a World Cup. I know from some folks who were instrumental in the deal to sign him that they looked at him. The reason they looked at him is, one, he impressed everyone in the room with his presentation and how much of a hard worker he is. But it was his ideas for how to develop the next level of player, not just the ones they have now. a big push for him is for dual nationals, which I think we've seen the U.S. take a massive focus on, which is smart for a nation like for Canada, because you've got people out there that can qualify to play for Canada. I'm thinking
Canada's
of
like Milan Borjan. Essentially, everybody in Canada is a dual national.
No, but who's the Moroccan goalkeeper that could have played?
Yassine
Bono, right? Find folks like that are good enough to play for other national teams that have a possibility of playing for Canada, get them in. Second of all, there's a player in Colorado Rapids, Bombito, right? He's very good, could potentially play for Canada. That's a player.
Bombito does play for Canada.
That's what I'm saying. That get him up to the level. Get these younger players, understanding the players in the market, get them up to the level.
So just to break this down,
that's important to the job. But World Cup, as long as they don't get embarrassed in the World Cup, I don't think you bring Jesse Marsch in to say, you got me to a semifinal or you're sacked. I don't think that's what you bring.
He can crash out of the group stage, and he's going to continue being the manager. And there's a long process but the measuring stick is going to be the World Cup. Without a shadow of a doubt.
That's why you take the job.
Of course. You have Nations League coming up, and that can, even with Nations League, it could be part of the whole, like, building process towards the World Cup. And then you shoot for the World Cup. You got to have a performance that dignifies what Canadian soccer has been building in these last couple of years. You got to get out of the group. You got to
get out of the group.
So you got to look at his style. Time out. Let's look at his style. Jesse Marsch is known for being ultra aggressive, the Red Bull philosophy, which is why I came and said that's not what this U.S. team needs, because for me it was like one-dimensional. Now, going through this Call It What You Want show, I've had these opportunities to really talk to him, and we had the Call It What You Want episode, Kicking It episode. He's obviously wants to evolve from that, right? That's his blueprint, but he wants to evolve for that. But there are things in it that he likes. High press, high energy, get the guys together. With this group, attacking-wise, if you have to decide how you want to use Alphonso Davies. We saw against Real Madrid, he was playing in a left wing role, and he scores a golazo, right?
They had him like
so Davies, Jonathan David, Tejan Buchanan. You have Kyle Larin still. Eustachio has more of a 8. They have weapons.
From your midfield up, you're stacked.
Attacking up.
Midfield
defensively, midfield,
sure.
And in the backs, Alistair Johnson, he's okay. Richie Larea, Sam Arakube, okay. Kamal Miller, okay. But then Cornelius, Bombito, Waterman. So you have to figure out a way to defend with this Canadian national team. And if he can do that, they have a real shot to make some noises, some big waves across the world.
I think we'd all agree this was a successful hire if they get out of the group in the next World Cup.
It's a successful hire for Canada.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer for Canada.
But Jesse's going to be so motivated. I mean, there's
100%.
The match versus the U.S. is going to be huge.
Oh, my Lord.
Could you imagine that? The U.S. men's national team manager versus the Major League Soccer Canada men's national team manager. Oh.
Nations League.
Brought to you by Coca-Cola.
Give me a Nations League final.
What's going to be,
US.
he's going to do one more episode of the pod?
Yeah.
What's your first question to Jesse?
Why?
Good one. That's always a good one.
Why? Because he had European offers. This isn't like he had nothing on the table and, here's Canada, and I'm desperate to take it. He had opportunities to manage in Europe with club teams. He decided to pass on that for this opportunity. So I want to know why. Why Canada?
It's a good choice.
South Korea wanted him. Another country with fantastic players. You could make a run in the World Cup.
They just fired Jurgen.
They just fired Jurgen Klinsmann.
He passed on South Korea.
I feel like I read
so
that.
if you're
you could even argue that South Korea has a little bit more talent than Canada.
Yes,
you absolutely could. That's an easy argument.
Yeah, all right, but and even history than Canada at World Cups, like he took
but he managed
the lesser caliber job.
He managed in Canada before. He was the
impact
coach. But a home World Cup, I think.
Right, that's the selling point.
You want to manage.
Family.
Wants to manage in the World Cup. His family's in Europe.
I don't think it's high risk. I don't think it's high risk as you say it is.
It is. If you want to manage in Europe, it's a super high risk job. Because if you fail, you have to come back to MLS. That's it.
Wow.
Or you go into a smaller club in Europe. You're not going to be managed. You once you go to touch the English Premier League, now you're saying,
right.
I want in Champions League, I want that.
So small club doesn't include anybody in the Prem.
He won't touch the Prem. If he fails with Canada, he's not touching the Prem. And you're hopeful you can touch a championship team, but not one that's Leicester City.
Wow.
Which
Do you know
was a
what? Good
club
for
that wanted him,
Jesse.
so.
I'm excited for
Yeah,
him. I
I'm
hope
happy
this
for
works
him.
out. Yeah,
gonna be
100%.
fun.
100%.